What happens when a beloved pop star sits down for what should be a simple morning interview, only to face an onslaught of condescending remarks and personal attacks from a host who clearly woke up on the wrong side of the bed? It only took 25 seconds of passive-aggressive questioning for the entire Good Morning America studio to witness one of the most shocking moments in morning television history. Miley Cyrus walked onto the Good Morning America set that morning with a smile on her face, ready to promote her new music and connect with fans. She wore a simple black outfit, her hair pulled back, looking every bit the professional artist she had become. The studio audience clapped as she took her seat across from Sam Champion, who was filling in as the main interviewer that day. Robin Roberts and George Stephanopoulos sat nearby at the curved desk, ready to chime in with their own questions. The cameras started rolling, and Sam began with what seemed like a standard opening. So Miley, thanks for joining us this morning. I have to say, we were all a bit surprised you agreed to come on the show today. Miley's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. Well, thanks for having me. I love connecting with people in the morning, and I have some exciting things to talk about. Sam leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Right. Your new music. Tell me, is this another one of those reinvention phases you go through every few years? Or are you actually committed to this sound? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. Robin Roberts shifted uncomfortably in her seat, exchanging a quick glance with George. Miley's eyebrows raised slightly, clearly taken aback by the dismissive tone. I wouldn't call it a phase, Miley responded carefully. I think artists evolve, and I have always been honest about where I am in my life through my music. Sam let out a small laugh, one that did not reach his eyes. Honest, that is an interesting word choice, because from where I sit, it seems like you just do whatever gets the most attention at any given moment. The studio went quiet. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze. George cleared his throat, attempting to redirect. Sam, maybe we should... But Sam held up a hand, cutting George off. No, I think America wants to know. Miley, you have gone from Disney darling to, well, let us just say some very questionable choices. How do you expect parents to trust you as a role model when you seem to change who you are with the wind? Miley's jaw clenched. She took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain her composure. First of all, I never asked to be anyone's role model. I was a kid on a TV show. I grew up just like everyone else grows up. I made my own choices about my art and my life. Your art, Sam repeated, making air quotes with his fingers. Is that what we are calling it now? Robin jumped in, her voice firm. Sam, I think that is a bit unfair. Sam turned to Robin with an irritated expression. Unfair? Robin? Come on. We are journalists. We ask tough questions. That's our job. He turned back to Miley. You put yourself out there in very provocative ways, and then you get upset when people question it? Miley's hands gripped the armrests of her chair. I am not upset that you are asking questions. I am upset that you are being disrespectful. There is a difference between asking tough questions and being condescending. Condescending, Sam scoffed. I am simply pointing out the obvious. You have made a career out of shocking people. The Wrecking Ball video, the VMA performance, all of it. And now, you want to sit here and act like you are some serious artist? George tried again to intervene. Sam, maybe we should move on to... Move on to what, George? Sam snapped. To pretend like this is not what everyone is thinking? I am tired of these celebrity interviews where we just lob softball questions and let them promote whatever they want without any real conversation. Miley sat up straighter, her voice steady but firm. Real conversation requires respect, something you clearly do not have for me or my work. Sam laughed again, that same cold, dismissive laugh. Respect is earned, sweetheart. And swinging naked on construction equipment is not exactly the path to respect. The word sweetheart landed like a slap. Robin audibly gasped. George put his hand over his face, The crew members behind the cameras looked at each other with wide eyes. Miley's face flushed, but her voice remained controlled. Do not call me sweetheart. And for your information, that video was about vulnerability and breaking free from expectations. But clearly, nuance is lost on you. Nuance, Sam repeated mockingly. Big word for someone who... For someone who what? Miley interrupted, her patience clearly wearing thin. Go ahead. Finish that sentence. Tell America what you really think. Sam leaned forward, his voice dripping with smugness. For someone who built a career on shock value rather than actual talent. There, I said it. You want honesty? That is honest. Robin stood up from her seat. Okay, Sam, that is enough. This is completely inappropriate. Sam waved her off. Oh, please, sit down, Robin. Since when did morning television become so sensitive? Since hosts decided to personally attack their guests, George said, his voice sharp. This is not journalism, Sam. This is you on some kind of power trip. Sam turned on George. Power trip? I am doing what everyone else is too scared to do. I am asking the questions that matter. Miley's voice cut through the bickering. You know what? You all can argue amongst yourselves, but I want to say something directly to Sam. She looked right at him, her eyes blazing. You do not know me. You do not know my journey. You do not know what I have been through or what my art means to me. You see a headline and you think you, and understand an entire human being. Sam rolled his eyes. Here we go. The victim speech. I am not playing victim, Miley shot back. I am standing up for myself, which is something you clearly cannot handle. You want to talk about respect? You have shown none today. Not to me, not to your colleagues, not to your audience. My audience loves this, Sam said with a smirk. Trust me, they are eating this up. Finally, someone who is not afraid to call out celebrities for their nonsense. Robin stepped closer to Sam's chair. Sam, you need to apologize right now. Apologize? Sam looked at Robin like she had grown a second head. For what? For being honest? For being cruel, Miley said quietly. There is a difference. Sam stood up from his chair, his voice rising. You know what your problem is, Miley. You cannot handle criticism. You live in this bubble where everyone tells you how amazing you are, and the second someone pushes back, you fall apart. I handle criticism just. Fine, Miley said, also standing. What I will not handle is being belittled and mocked by someone who clearly brought me here just to tear me down. The two stood facing each other, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. George moved toward them, trying to create space. Sam pointed his finger at Miley. You were brought here because our producers thought you had something interesting to say. Clearly, they were wrong. No, Miley said, her voice shaking slightly with anger. I was brought here because you needed ratings, and you thought you could use me to get them. But instead of having a real conversation, you decided to be a bully. Sam's face turned red. A bully? I am a bully? That is rich coming from someone who... Who what? Miley challenged. Say it. Whatever you are thinking, just say it. Sam took a step closer. Someone who has made millions of dollars off of being outrageous and controversial and now wants to act like some kind of misunderstood artist. You cannot have it both ways, Miley. I am not trying to have it both ways, Miley said, her voice rising to match his. I am trying to be a human being who makes art that means something to me. If you cannot understand that, then that says more about you than it does about me. Robin physically stepped between them. Both of you stop. This has gone way too far. Sam looked at Robin with disdain. Get out of my way, Robin. Excuse me? Robin's voice was ice cold. Did you just tell me to get out of your way? George joined Robin, forming a barrier. Sam, you need to take a break. Go cool off. Sam looked at both of them, then back at Miley. This is unbelievable. I am the bad guy now because I asked some tough questions? You did not ask tough questions, Miley said, her voice breaking slightly. You attacked me personally from the moment I sat down. You made fun of my work. You called me sweetheart, like I am some child you can dismiss. You implied I have no talent. That is not journalism. That is just mean. For a brief moment, something flickered across Sam's face, but then his expression hardened again. Well, if you cannot take the heat, maybe you should not have come on the show. That was it. That was the final straw. Miley took a deep breath, grabbed her purse from beside the chair, and looked Sam directly in the eyes. You are absolutely right, she said calmly. I should not have come on this show. Because this show, or at least you, do not deserve my time, or my energy. I came here to talk about my music, to connect with people, to have a meaningful conversation. But you had a different agenda from the start. Sam crossed his arms. So you are just going to leave? Run away when things get tough? Miley shook her head slowly. No, Sam. I am not running away. I am choosing not to participate in whatever this is. There is a difference, and I hope everyone watching understands that you do not have to sit there and take it when someone treats you poorly. She turned to Robin and George. I am sorry you had to witness this. You both tried to make it right, and I appreciate that. Robin reached out and touched Miley's arm. You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. George nodded in agreement. We are the ones who should be apologizing to you. Miley gave them a small, sad smile. Then she turned back to Sam one last time. I truly hope you figure out whatever is making you so angry that you feel the need to tear other people down. Because this is not who you are supposed to be. You are supposed to lift people up, not destroy them. Sam's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Miley looked at the cameras. To anyone watching, thank you for your support over the years. I am sorry this interview turned into what it did, but I want you to know that it is okay to walk away from situations where you are not being treated with basic human decency. You do not owe anyone your peace of mind. She adjusted her purse on her shoulder and started to walk toward the exit. The studio was completely silent except for the sound of her footsteps. Sam finally spoke, his voice loud enough to carry across the studio. That's right, walk away. That is what you do best, right? When things get real, you leave. Miley stopped walking. For a moment, it looked like she might turn around. Robin and George both held their breath, but then Miley simply raised her hand in a small wave without looking back and continued walking. Miley, wait, Robin called out, starting to follow her, but Miley shook her head. It is okay, Robin. Really, I just need to go. As Miley reached the studio door, one of the producers rushed up to her, clearly panicking. Miley, please, we can fix this. We can restart. There is nothing to fix, Miley said gently. This is not about the show. This is about respect. And I will not stay anywhere I am not respected. She pushed through the door and disappeared into the hallway. The heavy studio door closed behind her with a definitive thud. Back on the set, chaos erupted. Robin rounded on Sam immediately. What is wrong with you? What was that? Sam threw his hands up. What? I asked her some questions she did not like. So what? Those were not questions, George said, his voice shaking with anger. That was a character assassination. You went after her personally, repeatedly, even when we tried to stop you. Oh, come on, Sam said, but his bravado was starting to crack. She is a celebrity. She can handle it. Being a celebrity does not mean you forfeit basic respect, Robin said, and the way you spoke to her was disgusting. Calling her sweetheart, mocking her art, saying she has no talent, that was out of line, and you know it. One of the producers approached the set, her face pale. We need to go to commercial. Now. Sam looked around at the faces staring at him. The crew, his co-hosts, the producers. Everyone looked either angry or deeply uncomfortable. "You are all overreacting," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Overreacting?" George stepped closer to Sam. "You just drove a guest off our show, on live television, because you could not control your own ego." "My ego?" Sam's voice rose again. "This is not about ego. This is about holding people accountable." "Accountable for what?" Robin demanded. "For being an artist? For growing and changing? For being human? What exactly did she need to be held accountable for that justified the way you treated her?" Sam opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He looked at the floor, then at the empty chair where Miley had been sitting moments before. The producer spoke again, more urgently. "We are going to commercial in 10 seconds, whether you are ready or not." George and Robin walked back to their positions at the desk, but both refused to look at Sam. The energy in the studio had completely shifted. What should have been an upbeat morning show segment had turned into something dark and uncomfortable. 5 seconds, the producer called out. Sam stood alone in the middle of the set, suddenly looking very small despite his earlier bravado. He slowly walked back to his chair and sat down, his hands gripping the armrests the same way Miley's had just minutes before. "And we are going to commercial," someone called out. The moment the cameras cut, Robin stood up and walked off the set without a word. George followed her, leaving Sam sitting alone. The studio audience, which had been silent throughout the entire confrontation, began murmuring amongst themselves. Some looked shocked. Others looked angry. A few were already on their phones, no doubt posting about what they had just witnessed. Sam sat in his chair, staring at nothing. A makeup artist approached to touch up his face, but he waved her away. "Just leave me alone," he muttered. In the hallway outside the studio, Miley walked quickly toward the exit, her heels clicking on the polished floor. Her publicist caught up with her, phone already pressed to her ear, dealing with the fallout. "Miley, are you okay?" her publicist asked, putting the phone against her shoulder. Miley stopped walking and took a deep breath. "Yeah, I am okay. I just could not stay in there another second." "You did the right thing," her publicist said firmly. "The way he spoke to you was completely unacceptable." Miley nodded, but tears were starting to form in her eyes. "I tried to stay calm. I tried to handle it professionally, but he just kept going and going." Her publicist pulled her into a quick hug. "You were professional. He was not, and the world saw that." Back in the studio, the commercial break was ending. The producers were frantically trying to figure out how to continue the show. George and Robin returned to their seats, but the atmosphere was funereal. "We have 2 minutes of show left," a producer said. "How do you want to handle this?" George and Robin looked at each other. Robin spoke first. "We address it. We do not pretend it did not happen." "Are you sure?" the producer asked nervously. "Positive," George said. "Our audience deserves honesty." Sam had been silent during this exchange, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "Maybe I should be the one to address it." Robin turned to him, her expression hard. "I do not think that is a good idea, Sam." "Why not?" Sam looked up at her. "It was my interview. My questions." "Exactly," Robin said. "And I think you have said quite enough for one day." The producer held up her hand. 30 seconds to air. George straightened his jacket and papers. Robin smoothed her hair. Sam just sat there, looking lost. "And we are live in 3, 2, 1. George spoke first, his voice serious. "Welcome back. We need to address what just happened. Our guest, Miley Cyrus, has left the show after what became a very heated exchange." Robin continued. "We want to apologize to Miley and to our viewers. What you witnessed was not in line with the values of this show, or the respect we try to show all our guests." Sam opened his mouth to speak, but George cut him off with a look. We will be taking a hard look at how this happened and making sure it does not happen again. For now, we want to thank you for watching, and we hope you will join us again tomorrow. The camera pulled back to show the three hosts at the desk, the empty chair where Miley had sat still visible in the frame. It was an image that would be replayed and analyzed for days to come. "And we are clear," the producer called out. The second the cameras stopped rolling, Sam stood up and walked off the set without a word to anyone. George and Robin remained seated, both looking exhausted. "That was a disaster," George said quietly. "That was worse than a disaster," Robin replied. "That was a betrayal of everything we are supposed to stand for." In the control room, producers were already fielding calls from network executives, advertisers, and publicists. Social media was exploding with reactions. Video clips of the confrontation were being shared thousands of times per minute. Outside the building, Miley climbed into a waiting car, finally allowing herself to fully feel the emotions she had been holding back. Her hands were shaking, and tears rolled down her cheeks. "Where to?" the driver asked gently. "Just drive," Miley said softly. "I do not care where. Just get me out of here." As the car pulled away from the Good Morning America studio, Miley looked back at the building one last time. She thought about what had just happened, about how quickly a simple interview had turned into something so ugly. She thought about Sam's words, his tone, his refusal to see her as anything more than a target for his criticism. But mostly, she thought about how she had stood up for herself, how she had not let him diminish her or make her feel small, how she had walked away with her head held high, even though every instinct had told her to fight back harder. Her phone started buzzing with messages. Texts from friends, from her team, from other celebrities who had seen what happened. She turned the phone face down on the seat beside her, not ready to deal with any of it yet. "You okay back there?" the driver asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. Miley wiped her eyes and nodded. "Yeah, I will be. Thanks for asking." She leaned her head against the window and watched the city pass by, trying to process everything that had just occurred. In the span of less than 30 minutes, she had gone from excited about promoting her music to walking off a major television show after being disrespected and attacked. But as the initial shock started to wear off, something else settled in its place. Not regret, but a quiet sense of pride. She had stood up for herself. She had drawn a line and refused to let it be crossed. And that mattered, more than any interview ever could. The car merged into traffic, carrying her away from the chaos and toward whatever came next. Behind her, the Good Morning America building grew smaller in the distance. Inside that building, people were scrambling to contain the damage, to explain what had happened, to figure out what to do next. But Miley was done thinking about it. She had said what needed to be said, done what needed to be done. Now it was time to move forward, to focus on the people who valued and respected her, to pour her energy into her music and her art. She pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to her band. "Studio session tonight? I have some feelings I need to turn into songs." The response came back immediately. "Always. We got you." Miley smiled for the first time since walking into that studio. This was what mattered. Not the Sam champions of the world, but the people who supported her, who believed in her, who saw her as more than just a headline or a controversy. The car continued through the streets, and Miley took a deep breath, letting the tension slowly release from her shoulders. The morning had been terrible, but it was over now, and she had emerged from it with her dignity intact, her voice heard, and her boundaries firmly established. That was something worth celebrating.